recording. Our first question is, or kind of like statement is, please introduce yourself. What's your background? What are you running for and why are you running?
Okay, so my name is Chris McCoy, and I am running for Board of Trustees for CNUSD in Area 3, which is the downtown core area, and all along 6th Street, all the way over to Home Gardens, and all the way out the other way to, I think, about Yorba Boulevard. As far as who I am, I'm a father of 3 and a husband, and I'm a businessman. I was educated locally. I went to Esperanza High School in Yorba Linda, and then I went to Cal Poly Pomona. I was a marketing major, and I've been in business running a $66 million company for about 3 years now. My experience as far as activism and reform started in the early 2000s. I became really, I was living in downtown LA, which at the time was not like it is now. At the time, it was more of a lot of Skid Row and a lot of closed businesses. There wasn't a lot going on down there. And I worked with our city council in Los Angeles at the time to start some of the first neighborhood councils down there. And I don't know if you know how those work, but we have 13 city council persons for the city of Los Angeles, and their areas, because of the population growth, have become too big for them to properly represent everyone. So the idea of neighborhood councils was to basically bring, to localize feedback from residents. We called everybody a stakeholder, and now everybody does that. But at the time, it was kind of our big step forward was to make sure that our underserved communities and anyone, especially for us focusing in downtown Los Angeles, the big deal was the fact that we had Skid Row right there. I lived at 4th and Main, which is literally a block up from San Pedro and the Midnight Mission. And I would serve food at the Midnight Mission, and we worked very hard to try to help with the homeless problem down there at the time and get the city more involved by forming the neighborhood councils, just to make sure that we were providing proper shelter and proper resources so we could help folks that were homeless. Fast forward, when I moved to Corona, which was about 12 years ago now, I got here and found that there were some ordinances that were preventing folks from doing things like keeping chickens and some other things like that. So I jumped in and started introducing myself to everybody, and I got involved with the city through that. I found out that our agenda for all of our city council meetings and for all the business of the city was not being done in a manner that allowed someone who didn't have 24/7 internet access to read the agenda. It wasn't a portable document. You could look at it online, but you had to be able to follow the links to the actual staff reports and all of that. You had to be online to do it. And as we all know, a lot of folks, especially in my district, District 3, which is where I live, they don't have 24/7 internet access. Or they maybe have it on their phone, or they're maybe going to the library, or they're using a friend's, or they're using Wi-Fi at work only, and they don't have it at home. So really, it was excluding a large chunk of the population in District 3 from being able to just find out what's going on in their city and to do some study and get involved. About the same time, I helped form a group online called Citizens for Corona via Facebook. And we have 8,600 members, maybe 8,700 members now. And our whole purpose there is to get folks involved with local government and take civic action, change ordinances, and just reform our government and make it more transparent. Moving on from that, the last thing I've done, which I've worked 4 years on, and it's on the ballot this year, is Measure Y, which is pushing for term limits. So our council persons can only, at the most, serve 3 terms. We've had some council members that have been on there for 16 years. And really, you need to have term limits because people get very comfortable and they run out of ideas, and then they're just holding a seat and they're not really doing anything but serving themselves. So I'm a strong believer in term limits. And that's something, when I'm running for school board, that's something I'm going to institute there, is term limits, so no board member is there for more than 2 terms. I think that's a pretty good as far as a bio goes, I think that should be enough. If you have any other questions about me, I'm happy to answer them.
Our next question for you is, how has your experience within CNUSD shaped what you will do if you win the upcoming election?
My youngest is really she's my touchstone through all this, because she's the only one that's attended CNUSD from the time she was in kinder. And she went to Garrettson. She ended up in the gay program. She went to CFIS. She was in IB. She did a year at Centennial, and now she's moving into JFK. So I'm very familiar on all the different levels with the different programs that the school offers. The main reason that I'm running was because I didn't feel that as a parent communication was very good, and I felt very strongly that parent voices are kind of just an afterthought. And right now we have 5 board members, and not one of them has a child that's actually attending CNUSD, which I think is wrong. I think we should at least have 1 or 2, preferably all of them. So that's really where I started to get involved. Was I started to realize, especially as COVID came around, that we just weren't doing a good enough job notifying our parents what was going on, keeping our students notified of what was going on, which with my daughter, she was really struggling trying to figure out, like, am I going back to school? How much is the rest of this semester worth? We finished the end of the last school year, and some teachers were telling her that it was going to count as a large part of her grade. Others were telling her it was going to be 1% of her grade. And some were telling her it's not going to matter at all. Do the work, don't do the work. It was all over the map. And all of that is because of a lack of leadership at the top. Our administrative office, Dr. Lynn, they do not do a good job of communicating at all. So I felt it was important that I jump in and try to fix that. I am, as a person, I'm a listener. I have taught all 3 of my kids that, do more of this and less of this. And I think it serves me well, and I think it serves them well. My passion as far as CNUSD goes, I have a website. If you want to go look at it, it's just McCoy 43, McCoyFOR, and the number 3. I have some goals that I want to reach in my first term. I want to make sure that we have better oversight, so we don't have money embezzled like we did before, and find some savings so we can do some other programs for our students. And all of that can be done with better oversight. I want to see better communication and representation for parents. I want to have a single dashboard so parents and students can open it up and look at it and see all the announcements for the district, all their announcements for the school, where their grades are, where their homework is, and it's all on a single dashboard. So they don't have to run all over and use Q and check their emails and check their phones and try to find out where the specific information they need is. It'll all be in one place. And I think that's going to be a big help to everybody. I also want to make sure that teachers have an expense account for each classroom. So they have the ability, they'll have like an $800 expense account, so they can buy the right materials for their classrooms, including books, which kind of dovetails into what we're talking about here. If they want to try something that the district doesn't necessarily have in their library, and they want to expose kids to, say, poetry by Rumi, which was something that blew my mind when I got into college. And I'm like, wait, who's this guy? And Rumi is just amazing. And he's this Muslim poet that was around over 1,000 years ago. Having that type of diversity and exposure, I think, is important. And I think one of the ways that we do that is we give teachers the money to do it. As a business person, if my employees have to go out and do something for my business and they have to spend their own money, I reimburse them. And right now our teachers, that's not happening. Some of them are given some money, but it's a very small stipend, and they're taking money out of their own pockets to make their classrooms the right learning environment that they want. And that shouldn't be happening. If they're doing their job and they're making a classroom into a learning environment for their kids, they should have the money to do it right. So that's a big part of it. And that will definitely tie into what you're trying to accomplish, because for the most part, most educators have in CNUSD, if it's not just a curriculum item, like with Benchmark, which is what we use for elementary, they can choose their own literature. So although we do have to educate our teachers and talk to them more about what you want to accomplish and what I want to accomplish too, by the way, I share this goal with you. Part of the roadblock there is they have to be able to get the books to do it. And unless they have a proper expense account to do it, it's not going to happen. So I want to see us work to get that expense account in so they can.
Thank you. So the next question is, what are the actions that you hope to tackle and the topics you hope to tackle if you win the election?
So I did cover 2 of those right now, which my big ones are oversight and teacher expense accounts and parent outreach and communication. A couple others that I would really like to see us work on, and this is, I've been walking my district and I encountered some kids that go to Corona High School, and I was talking with them, and one of the things that they were sharing with me was we've become so focused on college level courses and college prep that we don't do any life skill classes. So doing resumes, learning how to weld, learning how to do basic things like repair your house, budget for your family and household budgeting and cooking and all of those home ec, all of those things have been kind of swept away. And we do have some of those programs. We do have some of them as a single semester class here or a class there, but I really like to see us have more, just like we're doing with JFK, where you can get your AA degree. I would like to see us be able to allow kids who want to go to, who want to get a technical certification as a welder or a mechanic. I want them to be able to graduate with those too. There's no reason why we can't do that, and maybe designate a couple of our schools for that and expand the AA degree program that we're doing at JFK into other schools as well, so we can help the kids that are on a college track. We can help them, but the kids that aren't on a college track, we can help them as well.
Thank you. And our next question is, do you recognize the need for a diverse curriculum within CNUSD, and what will you do to fight for one?
Yes. So my youngest daughter and her mom comes from Leon, Mexico. And so my daughter is half Hispanic and half Irish. God help her. So we've had to deal with that in our household. Dark skin, dark hair representation. I try to have her understand how much I support her and what we can do to make sure that she feels that she's connected to her culture on her mom's side of the family. It's important that I know from my personal experience, I graduated from high school in 1984, so way before most of you were even born, but my school did not expose me to any other culture. And it took me joining the Marine Corps and spending 4 years in a very mixed environment with folks from different cultures and different places in the country to realize, wow, this is a much bigger world. And then it took another 4 years of college for me to be exposed to feminist authors like Kate Chopin and Black authors like Gloria Naylor and Rumi, as I've talked about before. So I don't see any reason why we need to wait until someone graduates high school before they're exposed to the world and all these cultures and understand the plurality that is our nation and make sure that all of our kids are learning about it. And I think from my perspective, I think the most racism you find and most prejudice is born out of ignorance. And the only way that you eliminate ignorance is by exposure to cultures that are not homogenous. So to me it's a high priority, and I was thrilled when I got your invitation and when you originally approached me. because this is something I've been thinking about, and how do I do this, and how do I make this happen? So it's kismet. I'm really happy, and I will absolutely support this. And it's just a matter of what I'm trying to figure out is how to make it happen. And I've talked with a couple of teachers already about how do we execute this. And on the elementary level, they're like, I don't know. But for basically 7 through 12, the teachers that I've spoken with, they are all, especially with what's happened this year with George Floyd and just all of the issues that we have with our nation right now, teachers are more open than ever before about introducing different voices into their classrooms. So it's just a matter of how we make that happen at the district level without going around our curriculum needs. And I think the way to do that, again, is through a classroom expense account where they can purchase their own books. If they're buying them that way, they should be able to do whatever they want. And I think at the administrative level, if we have books that they're checking out or bringing into their classroom from our storage, we need to make sure that new purchases, we have plenty of O. Henry, and we have plenty of white male authors that we tap for every single high school class and every single English class. I don't see any reason why we can't set a mandate that any new books bought for, let's say, 5 years or 10 years to be taught in class have to be from an author that is a person of color. I don't see why we can't do that. That all that's going to do is fill our stores with diversity and give our teachers more options.
Our next question is, what makes our campaign's mission meaningful to you?
Like I said, my daughter is a minority as well, and I have experienced and seen her have to deal with prejudice. And so for me, this is something that's important, and I think it's something that we can. It's an easy enough fix. I don't see, it just makes sense. There's no reason why we can't do this.
Thank you. Our next question is, how important do you think listening to student voices is if you become a board member?
So my plan, now keep in mind that, the rubber needs to meet the road. If I do win and I get the opportunity to, my plan is to do open house, town hall type sessions at each of the campuses. So it'll be a rotating, clearly I have to focus on Area 3 first, but I want to get throughout the district and let students know, hey, I'm going to be at Santiago on the 15th from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. If you want to show up, you can ask me any question you want, and you can give me any feedback you want, and I will listen. And again, like I said, I do more of this, do less of this. I think it's important for everybody to do that. So I will go, I will listen, I will let folks know how I feel about it, and we'll work from there. And I plan on doing that at every school, but I need to do it for parents and I need to do it for students. And it's a little bit harder with students because generally speaking, they're leaving 2:45, 3 o'clock. So a lot of times they have to catch a ride and I won't be able to reach them. So what I might try to do with some of the feedback I got is do that after hours, but maybe do Zoom calls or do an off-campus location, like at a park rec center or something like that, where the kids can come out at like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and we can do it there. So, but my intention is to do, I don't necessarily want to call them town halls, but district halls or campus halls, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you for your answer. Our next question is, what will you do to ensure that all students have a safe and discrimination-free environment at school?
That's a great question. So one of the things I can tell you this, and this is a true story. My daughter was 3 years old, not 3 years old. My daughter was in third grade. And she was at Garrettson, and she had a kid push her down and give her a concussion. And she was out of school for about a week, and then she got back and she was really nervous. And we had a conversation that day after school. It was in a Taco Bell, of all places. And she was like, Dad, I'm just worried. What if somebody pushes me again? I'm really scared. I said, well, here's the thing, kiddo. Your job and your only worry at school should be learning. That's your job. Your job is to go to school to learn. You should not have to have fear of anything. You should not have to prepare in any way for any social, I don't know, what word do you want to use? Unpleasantness. You should be at school to stay focused and to learn. And all the other stuff should fall away when you're in there. You shouldn't have to worry about, outside, shooters coming in, or kids bullying, or anybody being prejudiced. All those things, we need to have an open reporting system so kids can talk about those things and they can be taken serious, no matter how minor they are. I don't want any student in our district, any of them, not one, to ever have to worry about that, because that's not what they're at school for. They're at school to learn. They're at school to be left alone to learn and to be challenged by their teachers and no one else. So my plan, I guess, the way that I would like to see that dealt with is to encourage kids and start the school year off letting them know that they can talk to their administrators, and making sure that administrators and teachers are aware that there will be repercussions if they're not listening to kids and if they're not dealing with things right away. I saw that at CFIS. I saw some teachers that were dismissive of kids that were saying, hey, I got shoved on the stairs, I got pushed, this, and there is no time for that. Kids shouldn't have to worry about that ever. So I'll do my best to make sure that every educator and administrator in the district is aware that we're going to take that serious, and we're going to try to take the fear out of the campuses.
Thank you. Our next question is, what skills, connections, resources, and or expertise do you have to offer and are willing to use on behalf of the organization in order to better aid student organizations such as Diversify or Narrative in their efforts?
I think I would go back to the same strategy of using the open house, town hall type format, where I'll meet with any group I want to at any time. Really the only limit is how much time am I able to give to each group and be fair, because I do need to be fair to parents in general first, and then I need to be fair to students and then student groups. So juggling all of that and making sure everybody is getting the right amount of attention could be a challenge. And if it is, I might work with the superintendent to see if we can have maybe I don't want to say a convention, but a gathering where we can get the different groups together and talk about the different issues that they all have in common and see if we can solve them that way.
Yeah, thank you. So our next question is, how would the school board determine if district personnel are adequately trained in issues such as discrimination, racism, and mental illness if you were elected?
So I'll be honest with you, I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution for that right now. I do feel that our counselors need to play a more active role. The ones that I've talked to want to. So I think that's something where we need to, going back to what I had said earlier about making sure that we eliminate bullying and fear on the campuses, I think all of that is something that's not really the administrator's job as far as a principal or vice principal. I think that's something that the counselors need to be involved in, and that ties into this as well. So I'm not sure what the solution is to that yet, but it's something I'll work on.
And then our last question is there anything else that you would like to mention before we conclude this meeting?
Send me some books. Give me some suggested titles you love and that speak to you. I'm an avid reader myself. I read all the time. So I would love to hear what you feel are important works and have more conversations. You have those conversations with your groups. I was going to ask you that before. Are you on different campuses, or is this primarily centered on JFK right now?
this is for all campuses. It's all CNUSD. We have about 50 active organizers, but more
Oh,
than
that's great.
100, yeah, more than 100 signed up. So they're kind of like involved, but not as active. And yeah, they're from all different campuses, all different grade levels. A couple alumni like Hiba. Yeah.
Well, that's great, and I love that. So talk to everybody, ask them to please send me some suggestions. I am open. I'll read as many of them as I can, and the ones that I don't read, at least I'll have a list so I can start talking to our educators and be like, hey, have you thought about this one? Hey, have you thought about this one? I know some students that read this and absolutely love it, and I think this would help. It just helps me when I'm having those conversations that they're not just going to go, this guy, but I'll actually be able to say, try this book, look at this book. It helps. It will help a lot, and I'll be relying on all of you to help me with this. But you absolutely have my support, and once I'm in, this is a conversation and a meeting that we need to have, like within the first month.
So.